Sunday in our series. This is actually the sermon that I wrote the whole series for. We're going through the book of Judges. There are way more Judges than we've gone through. Maybe we'll come back to it at some point, but this is the last one that we're going to go through. How many like a good movie? Anybody like a good movie? Hopefully appropriate, right? All the things I'm looking forward to today. It's been a long weekend, so we're like, we got a date with the couch today, right? Anybody else? It might be a little rainy. Let's eat some chicken noodle soup or something, and let's do that. But some of these I was looking up some of the greatest movie quotes of all time. May the force be with you. You guys can help me out if you know this. There was a young girl who said this: there's no place like home, right? Not a young girl, but a big, giant man said this: I'll be back. Yeah, I'll be back. In his cool voice that he has. Other movie quotes, you had me at? Hello, yeah. Another one that I like, the good old, I think it's Clint Eastwood who said this: go ahead, make my day. Yeah. One of my favorites, there's no crying in baseball. There's no crying in baseball. You can just see Tom Hanks saying that. But my favorite, I think this might be my all-time favorite quote. It's from this true story of a man named Captain America. No, it's not a true story. But before he was Captain America, before he went to the machine and got the serum and became this big man, he was just a little shrimp of a guy. And the guy says, somebody give him a sandwich. That's not my favorite quote, but he's fighting this guy who's much bigger than him. He's out in the alleyway, and he's fighting. He just keeps getting knocked down, knocked down, knocked down. And he stands up, and they think he's done, but he stands up and he says this phrase, and he says it throughout the saga several times, but he goes, I can do this all day. I can do this. So look at your neighbor and say, I can do this all day. I can do this all day. There is something just absolutely remarkable about a person who just keeps showing up. Right? You know what I'm talking about? They might not be the best, the most talented. They might not have it all going together, but they just keep on showing up. I bet there's somebody in the room that probably said yes to an engagement or to marriage because the guy just was relentless and kept showing up. Right? I see that look over there. He just wouldn't take no for an answer. He just kept showing up. The persistent widow in the Bible who just keeps showing up and asking the master, the judge, like, you're going to do this. And finally he just said, I'm tired of this. Like, give whatever she wants, just give it to her. Some of you need to be a little more like that in prayer. Like, just keep showing up. And this is what we're going to talk about this morning. They're not loud, they're not flashy, they may never trend online, they may never be trending. They might not ever write a book, but they are faithful. Right? The Sunday school teacher who's been teaching for 30 plus years, faithfully week in and week out. The mom who prays over her children every night, nobody sees but God. Right? These people that are never noticed by the crowd, but they're deeply noticed by God. And so, tucked away in the book of Judges, one of the darkest, most chaotic books, right, in all of Scripture, there's this man in Judges chapter 10, and his name is Tola. Everybody say Tola. It makes me a little hungry. It reminds me, every time I say it, I'm like, Toll House, and then it makes me go to cookies, and then anyway. Judges chapter 10, if you would read with me verses 1 and 2. It says this: after Abimelech, there arose to save Israel Tola. Now hold on with me. This is one of the greatest genealogical verses in all of the Bible. Hear me out. Tola, which is a weird name to start with, right? Am I correct? Tola, the son of Pua, the son of Dodo. Dodo begat Pua, begat Tola, and they're all from the tribe of Issachar. That's funny. That's good stuff. I don't know. I don't know if that's just like, I wouldn't recommend naming a son that, but I mean, go for it. We had a Tua in your family, but not a Pua. There's a big, Tula. Never mind. I'm just going to stop. He lived in Shamir, the hill country of Ephraim, and he judged Israel 23 years. and then he died. He was buried in Shamir. This is all we get. 2 verses. I hope I can preach well on these 2, but these are the only verses we get from this man whose name was Tola. So before we get into a lot of this, we are going to talk about faithfulness today. Just keep showing up. I can do this all day. Let's start with the context of faithfulness here. It says this, after Abimelech. And if you were with us last week, we talked about Gideon. Your Bible also transitions and names him Jerubbaal, which means to contend with Baal because he tore down Baal and his father's altar that he had to him. But he had 70 sons from his wife. Gideon did. They were busy. 70 sons. That's a lot of kids. And then he had one. Don't laugh at that, no. One from his concubine. And his name was Abimelech. And so the 70 sons were ruling the land at the time. And Abimelech, he's talking to the townspeople and he's getting them to his side. He goes, why are you being ruled by 70? Wouldn't it be much better if it was just ruled by 1? And if you let me be your ruler, whatever you ask for, I'll give you. I'm paraphrasing here, but this is essentially what happens. And so they take and they go, yeah, we'll make you the king. That sounds great, Abimelech. We'll make you the ruler. And so the townspeople take all 70 of Gideon's sons and they basically slaughter them. It was a massacre. And then one son got away and he's up on the hill and he shouts out and he goes, what you've done is wrong. This is terrible. I can't believe you guys surrendered the blessing that God had for you and let Abimelech rule you. And there's going to be destruction, all these things. And so it becomes this terrible, chaotic mess. This is the context that Tola arose in. This context of chaos, which is basically the story of the whole book of Judges. But this is where he shows up, is after Abimelech. After chaos, after confusion, after death and massacre, here arose Tola. After destruction, Tola stood up. He didn't arrive to applause, he arrived to ashes. I mean, think about this. Tola's faithfulness began in the rubble of someone else's failure. Anybody ever felt like you've been there before? Like, I've got to come in and pick up all the pieces? What happened? Can I tell you today that sometimes the most faithful thing you can do is simply stand when everything around you is falling apart. When all you've done, when you can do all that you can do, stand. There's some days, anybody with me? There are some days where you just don't have it. There are some days when you're just not feeling it. Some days when you're like, I don't know if I can take another step. Then don't. But stand. Husbands, wives, moms, dads, when there's chaos in your family or around you at work, like sometimes the most important thing you can do for your family, dads, is to be faithful and to just keep showing up. Teenagers, sometimes the most faithful thing you can do at work, at school, at the place that you go to, is just to stand. Listen, you might not fix everything overnight. You may not even see the fruit of your labor. Think of Hebrews chapter 11. All of the men and women, the heroes of faith, and it said none of them saw the promise. Not until after Christ, and even holding hands with us generations later, are they finally in heaven seeing the promise through us. That's why it says in Hebrews chapter 12, therefore, now that we're surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses, we're together seeing the promise fulfilled. And sometimes in your life you're not going to see the promise, but you just keep showing up. And so often faithfulness begins where others quit, where others give up. It's been about 20 years now since Hurricane Katrina happened. You guys heard of Hurricane Katrina. A lot of you remember it. It wasn't the worst hurricane we've ever seen. And a lot of what happened, a lot of the reason there was such destruction in New Orleans is because the levee broke. Because they hadn't done regular maintenance. They hadn't done their inspections that they were supposed to. And so it was one of these just weird happenstance moments where the hurricane just came at the right place at the right time and the levee broke and there's just devastation. And if you don't remember, they were showing a lot of reruns this year because it's a special year, just remembering all that happened. But as I was watching and seeing and remembering, and we weren't affected by it, but just remembering the devastation. And years later, there are still people that left that never went back. didn't have insurance. Houses are destroyed. There are still parts of New Orleans to this day that aren't put back together. And early on, a lot of people went in, and a lot of help, and the Red Cross and Salvation Army, even Convoy of Hope, one of our great ministries of the Assemblies of God, they were there giving water, clean water, and food and provision. But eventually, it becomes old news. Eventually, it's like we've covered this enough. Eventually, it's like there's more pressing, important stories, and when the cameras leave, guess what's still left? Devastation, destruction. And yet there were still people that faithfully showed up to say, I will help. There were churches in that community that said, when everybody leaves, we're still here. And that's what God's calling us to be. In this world that's devastated, that's falling apart, that's in chaos, to be that person that says, I'm going to be here when everybody else leaves. Come on, some of you need to be that in your family. When the boyfriend or girlfriend breaks up, dads, moms, like, I'm still here, and I'm faithful. When a loved one passes away, and it seems like there's just so much heartache, that you're still here, that you still show up, that you still remember. Sometimes the most important thing you can do, more than Gideon, more than the miracles, more than the up and down roller coaster life of Samson, as great as he was, sometimes the best thing you can do is to be stable. And to be that thing for your family, for your workplace, for this world that they so desperately need. And that's what Tola was. God raised him up. He didn't raise him for glory. He raised him up for stability. And sometimes that's the most heroic calling of them all. So we have the context of faithfulness. Now let's walk through just for a moment the character of faithfulness. It says this. We don't know a lot about him. There weren't any battles. There weren't any miracles. There weren't any grand speeches. It just says this. He lived in Shamir. He judged Israel for 23 years. And then he died. That's it. There were no fireworks. There was no great moments. But there also weren't any scandals. Sometimes that's important too, right? Like, look at the life of Samson. He was incredible. He reigned for about the same amount of time, and there are so many more chapters about him than these 2 verses about Tola. But it's like this, isn't it? I mean, it's a disaster waiting to happen. And did happen. And so Tola, he's faithful. Can we just do some wordplay here for a moment? The word Tola. I don't know if you guys remember a sermon way back when I was talking about Jonah and the bread and the manna and all this stuff in our donut shop Christianity. But the word Tola in the Bible means worm or scarlet. So when we see the Israelites, they get the manna, and God said, trust me, the manna is going to show up every morning. So don't take more than you need and don't hold it overnight. Right? And so they do, because they weren't sure and they were nervous. And so they kept it overnight. And it says the next morning, if they kept it overnight, it was full of maggots. That word for maggots is Tola. What a great name, right? You already got Pua and Dodo, and now you just put worm in there, maggots, right? Like the grandson of Dodo, the maggot, right? That's what it means. And then you look in the book of Jonah, and he's sitting there frustrated that God's not destroying Nineveh, that they all came to repentance. He was upset that people got saved. God help us if that ever becomes us. And God gives him this branch to cover him from to shade him from the sun. But the very next moment comes this worm that eats the branch away. And that worm, that word is Tola. Tola. But there's also another use for this worm. We see it with the priests, the Levitical priests, that they would take these worms that seem to be frustrating. Anybody like these worms? We have this science book that we read at night that's kind of got biblical things. And if you ever go to Australia, they have like foot-long worms there. Not foot-long subways, $5 foot, no, worms. How many would like to encounter one of those? Not a snake, a worm that's massive. But these worms that people probably just get rid of or say, I don't want anything to do with this, or let's spray our house so we don't get infested. The priests would actually take those worms, and these worms had a substance inside of them that they used to dye the priestly garments. It was a purplish red color that would come out of these worms to dye their clothing. Think about that just for a moment. Something humble, something insignificant, something that most people just passed on by was used to give color to what God was doing in the priestly world. it's incredible. There's some humility for that. That's what I think faithfulness really is humility used for heaven's work. Humility used for heaven's work. Something humble and lowly was used to color the things of God. Could that be said of us? Like, most people might not see much of us. Even the psalmist said, I'm a worm. I'm nothing. Maybe some of you feel that way today, but you can color the things of God. You can be stable enough. You can be consistent enough. I can do this all day. I'm just going to keep showing up. And I promise you, people take notice. People take notice. This person just keeps showing up. So we see that he's humble, that he's got faithfulness, that he's this, but he's also a man of Issachar. And if we read in 1 Chronicles 12:32, it says this, from Issachar, men who understood the times and knew what Israel should do. This was a tribe of wisdom. Come on, can we be people from the tribe of wisdom this morning? Here's a wise, humble man who simply does what God called him to do for 23 years. He just kept showing up. He just kept showing up. I can do this all day. Look at your neighbor and say, I can do this all day. I'm telling you right now, faithfulness is not measured by fame, but by endurance. Faithfulness is not found in a single moment. Faithfulness is a rhythm of steady obedience. We have moments of faithfulness, but I pray that your life from beginning to end would be marked with a steady faithfulness, a steady obedience from the beginning to end. I love flash as much as the next person. I love the big moments. I love the exciting miracles, all of those things. But more important is that we would just be consistently following God, consistently sharing. Listen, there's no greater way to share the gospel than to just keep showing up and telling them. Eventually, they're going to cave and say, fine, I'll go to church with you if you leave me alone. If I go, will you stop asking me? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is what we just have to keep doing. I love looking at God's beauty. Anybody else just like to go outside and just be in awe? We were in the mountains for a couple days at Ministers Retreat up in Gatlinburg, and we were in this we stayed in a cabin with my in-laws, and it was out further away, and so I could go outside and just see the stars as clear as day out at night. So I was glancing up, and then I kept glancing down to make sure bears weren't out because they've been very active. And so, but it's just gorgeous. And every morning when I wake up and take the dogs out, I see the sunsets. Anybody like a good Thomas Kincaid sunrises? The morning sunrise, night sunset. We'll get it. Anybody like a good Thomas Kincaid photo or picture or whatever they are? Just all these things. If you go in America, I mean, I love traveling. If you go all over, America is one of the most beautiful places. You have this area that's gorgeous with the mountains, the Appalachian, the rock, the Smokies. But then you go over to Colorado. Anybody been to the Rocky Mountains? That's a whole different look. Like, those are real mountains, right? They go past the tree line. You go a little further up, though, and you got this place called Yellowstone. That has hot springs and Old Faithful and geysers, and it's on top of this active volcano that might erupt and blow half of America away. Like, there's something exciting about that. But then you go down to the southwest and you got deserts. Just keep you on your toes. Make sure you love Jesus. Then you got this desert that's just gorgeous, right? A different look in the mesa, the plains of the middle where I used to live in Nebraska that you can just see for miles and miles and miles. Like, the tornado's coming to get you. Like 10 minutes before it gets there. And you just keep staring because you're like, this is incredible, And then you get down to the southeast, and all of a sudden we got alligators and swamps. Like, where did this come from? I bet the settlers, when they're going out west, they're like, what is this place? America, the beautiful. Yeah, it's gorgeous, and it'll kill you. And then you go all the way up to the northeast, up to Maine, and you got these wild horses running on the beaches. But one of the things I love about there, I'm going somewhere, I promise. This isn't just a random thought. When you get up to the northeast, you start seeing these massive structures. They're called lighthouses. Anybody ever seen a lighthouse? Anybody ever been into a lighthouse? You climb up to the top, and they're just beautiful. And this is what I see Tola as in this passage. He's not the boat running out to say, he's not the Coast Guard going to find the ship. He's the stable person that's never moving, that just keeps keeps shining his light day and night so that when the sailors, when they're lost at sea and they're not quite sure where they're at because the storm came and they can't navigate with the stars any longer, they can go, there's a piece of equipment right there called a lighthouse that I can know where I'm at because I can see that, and it's never moving. It's like the North Star. It never changes. So I might be tossed to and fro by the waves, but I can always, as long as I can see the lighthouse, I know where I'm going. And this is what Tola was to a generation, and this is what God is calling us to be to a generation, is to be stable and steady, that when everything around is falling apart, they can look up and see you. They can look up and see the Christ that's in you. This is what God is calling us to be. A lighthouse. It doesn't move, it doesn't shout, it doesn't chase. It just stands, shining its light every night, guiding sailors home. And as big as the storm can be, man, this thing is steady. And that was Tola. When others chased power, he just showed up and chased presence. Sometimes what people need more than anything is just the power of your presence being there in the room. When others sought recognition, he sought righteousness. When others built kingdoms, he quietly built stability. So we kind of got the context now of what this looks like, the character of faithfulness, and last we've got the fruit now of faithfulness. And here's something beautiful. During Tola's 23 years of leadership, there are no wars recorded, no foreign oppressors, which is very, very rare for this book. Actually, it's very rare for the whole history of Israel. All the way through the kings, all the way until Jesus' time. Even when Jesus showed up, who was ruling? Not the Israelites, the Romans. So this was very rare. And there wasn't even internal rebellion. Because what he walked into actually was not because of outside oppression. It was because of internal combustion. It was because of internal things happening. It wasn't outside forces, it was inside. Sometimes the biggest threat to your house is not external. It's not the devil made me do it. Right? So the book James says, he goes, sometimes it's the enemy, sometimes it's just you, your flesh, you. And so we need not just something to protect us from outside, but also from inside. And so we see this, that Tola's steady hand, that Israel experienced peace. When God's people are faithful, the world around them feels it. When a husband's faithful to his family, to keep showing up, peace fills the home. I mean, this is the fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, right? When the pastor, when the leaders, when the people of the church are faithful to keep showing up, to keep doing their part, to keep loving and serving in the roles, the church finds health and then finds growth. When believers are faithful in small things, others find refuge in their steadiness. Listen, Tola didn't deliver Israel with a sword, but he did deliver them with stability. And sometimes that's the miracle we need most. Can I tell you, I would love to see the blind eyes open. Wouldn't you? Anybody else with me? One of my prayers before I die, I'd love to see somebody come back to life, to be raised from the dead. They might not like it, especially if they're a believer. They're like, why'd you bring me back? I'm so angry with you right now. But it would be wouldn't it be incredible to have a moment like that? To see these incredible miracles. I've seen some, but I'd love to see more. And these signs shall follow those who believe. Cast out demons, heal the sick, raise the dead. Drink poisonous things and they won't harm them. All of these things should be signs that follow. But I'm telling you right now, the greatest miracle ever is simply salvation. And sometimes the second greatest miracle is just the stability day in and day out. We all like those great testimonies, right? I was addicted, I was on drugs, and then God freed me. But what about the testimony that I served the Lord when I was 5 years old, and I said yes, and I was baptized, and I never strayed? We can't forget that is the greatest testimony, that God sustained me through my whole life. And I was faithful, and he was faithful. Look at Matthew 25:21. When we get to heaven, we stand before the Lord. He's going to look and say, well done, good and fruitful servant. Well done, good and faithful. Not how much we did, not how much we said, not how much we produced. Good and faithful servant. I love this verse in Galatians 6:9. It just keeps me on my toes and keeps me moving even when I don't want to, right? Let us not grow weary in doing good. For in due season we will reap if we do not give up. Sometimes the fruit of faithfulness is invisible for a while. Sometimes we don't see it all at once. I'm going to share with you, even in nature, we see these concepts. There's several pine trees that do this, but one specifically is called the lodgepole pine. And they have cones, and they stay tightly sealed with this resin that's super thick around the seed, the cone. And it's the lodgepole pine, and so the cone drops, and that seed will just sit on the ground or in the ground for years. It just sits there because the resin's so tight that it just sits there until there's a forest fire. And the heat of the fire, when everything's getting destroyed, this thing's coming to life. And this is what God's asking us to do. Listen, when everything around you is destroyed, the heat melts the resin so the seed can finally take root in the ground. So when there's destruction all around, what did God do in creating creation? Is he goes, now there can be new life. Now there's fertile soil, and I haven't left you devastated. There's actually seeds that were made for this so that new pines can grow. Isn't that incredible? We don't always see the fruit in the moment, but if you just sit there long enough, eventually he will come and you'll be worth something. And then the animals and the people have places now to reside and hide under and nest in and on and on and on. And that's what faithfulness looks like. It holds on through the fire, and what looked like destruction becomes a birthplace of growth. Isn't that cool? There's another one. This is one of my favorites. It's the Chinese bamboo tree. And you plant this in the ground, and it does absolutely nothing for 5 years. We wouldn't last with a bamboo tree. Like, if it doesn't make it halfway through the season, we're like, let's dig this thing out and put something else in. I'm not going to deal with plants that aren't hardy. Like, I need something that shows me growth instant. Anybody like instant gratification? I need it now. It's my money and I want it now. Sorry. But for 5 years, you just plant, you water, you tend, and you wait. Nothing even breaks through the surface. There's not even a sign of life for 5 years. But in the 5th year, in just a few weeks, it shoots up 90 feet. 90 feet in a few weeks. That's massive growth because it was faithful, 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 faithful. The growth was happening all along. You just couldn't see it. And faithfulness works underground before it ever appears above. I'm telling you right now, you start working in here, and God will start letting it come out when it's ready. You do the work in here. Let God do the work in here. And when the time is right for you to witness, when the time is right for that moment, God will give you the words to say, and we'll see. I believe that, and I'm praying that over this church too. I'm not praying for 5 years. I'm just saying, let's see some exponential growth here, because we're just going to keep showing up. Yeah, right? I can do this all day. And then there's a story, I love it. They made a movie out of it called Faith Like Potatoes. And there was this massive famine. And so a farmer, he actually plants the seed. They told him not to. Don't waste it. Don't waste the potato. Don't plant it right now. It's famine. And he says, God told me to plant it. I have to be faithful to him. And they say, don't. It doesn't make sense. Now is not the time. And if you plant it now, it's wasted. And we might not ever see potatoes grow here again. And the man plants them. And the thing about potatoes is they're growing the same way, under the soil where nobody can see. And you can't just dig under and look at if it's growing or not. You can't disrupt the process. The only way you know if it's growing is one day, when it's harvest time, you just hope, you have faith, right, that they're there. People call him foolish, but he just kept going out every day tending the field. And I love this story because when harvest finally was ready and came, he had so much produce. If you've never seen the movie, it's incredible. You need to watch it. But it's called Faith Like Potatoes, and it's just those things that grow underground that you have no idea if it's going to show up, and yet it does. And that's Tola. And I'm praying today that that can be you and me as well. Maybe there's only 2 verses about your whole entire life. But you were faithful for 23 years. You were faithful for 35 years. You were faithful in your marriage for 50 years. You just kept showing up. There were times it got rocky, but I just kept showing up. Because God measures greatness different than we do. He's not looking for fame, he's looking for faithfulness. He didn't come to this earth looking for the Pharisees or the most well-educated. He came and found some poor fishermen. He came and found an outcast tax collector. Listen, if we know that God chooses unknown, ordinary people, just look at you and me today, right? I'm not calling you normal and ordinary, but I'm just saying, look around the room. Like if he can use us, he's not looking for the best or the cream of the crop. He's looking for those that are faithful, that just keep steadily serving him. He doesn't reward visibility either. There's nowhere in Scripture that you see that God rewards you having more influence. He rewards obedience. So this morning, maybe you've wondered if your small acts of service, do they matter? Has my life made a difference? Has my prayer? Anybody ever prayed before and you're like, I don't know if this is matter. Does this work? You're giving. I've been faithful in tithe and I've not seen it come back in this way. Should I stop? Your time, your faithfulness, maybe you felt overlooked, unrecognized, unseen. But can I tell you this? God keeps records that heaven never forgets. God keeps records that heaven never forgets. Because one day I'm praying and believing that all of us will stand before God and he's going to look at us and say those words we've all been waiting our lifetime to hear. Well done, good and faithful servant. Would you bow your heads with me just for a moment this morning? Here's what God's asking you to do. Just be faithful where God has planted you. Keep showing up. Keep standing firm. Keep shining your light. Your faithfulness is changing eternity, whether you see it or not. Maybe this morning the context is that your life, the world around you, people around, maybe things are falling apart, it seems. And it's been a really difficult season. Maybe some of you, it's not the world around you. Maybe it's some of you, it's internally, that you're just struggling. There's confusion and chaos in your mind, and it just keeps racing, and it won't stop. You don't have peace in your heart. Maybe some of you have been faithful, kind of like the elder son who just keeps showing up to work, and you're like, man, everybody is getting rewarded and celebrated except for me. I'm not seeing the fruit. Should I quit? I'm telling you today, whatever season, whatever context you find yourself in, I'm asking you, go one more day. Make it one more moment. So this morning, if that's you, any of those, you have chaos around you, chaos in you, or you're just not seeing the fruit that you want to see, I'm going to ask you this morning, would you stand and make your way up front so we can pray together and make a statement, really, that God, we're going to be faithful in spite of.